Stand by, everybody. I'll be with you in just a second. Just a lot of changes with the new advisory, and we're getting all the information together. Just 1 or 2 minutes. Be right there. By the way, if you have questions, specific questions you want to ask, if in the comments you would put a Q in front of the questions, that would be a big help to help me see what you're asking. Thank you. Hi, everybody, and good afternoon. We're just getting the graphics together here for the update here, and there's a lot of new information on Tropical Storm Idalia. Okay, first of all, the bottom line is this is a major threat to the Florida coast. Exactly how bad the impacts are going to be in the very, very populated areas, for instance, around Tampa Bay and plus and minus north and south, is an open question. The threat is significant. When I say threat, I'm not saying it's absolutely going to be the worst that it could be. The indications are at the moment that the odds favor the worst being farther north, but the forecast, in other words, the forecast for what we need to be ready for and prepare for around Tampa Bay is daunting. It's up to 7 feet of water above normal high tide around Tampa Bay. And that includes on the Gulf side, and that includes in Tampa Bay itself. So just as an example of one of the threats here, and there are many, many. So let's go through it and show you what we have here right now. This is the satellite picture of the system. It's moving very slowly to the north at 8 miles an hour. So it has started moving to the north, and this, of course, 11 a.m. advisory. The hurricane hunters are out there, and they've only found 65-mile-an-hour winds. I say only because the pressure has been dropping, so an indication that the storm is getting stronger, but the winds have not yet completely picked up. When we enhance it with the computer, what you see is this core developing in the storm. All this is just signs of developing storm. There's where the computer analyzes the center of circulation. So it is moving to the north, but you see that the thunderstorms are not around the center. So that's what will happen as it develops. But it has to get into the Gulf of Mexico, get away from the land, and all that is indeed expected to happen. Tomorrow is the forecast. We're forecasting it to really come together and intensify perhaps rapidly as it approaches the Florida coast. Now, let's take a look at the cone. We look at the cone, and then we remember that there are big impacts outside the cone, as we saw in Hurricane Ian. Also, people are looking at the cone and thinking, okay, if it goes down the middle, that's going to be well north of Tampa Bay. But let's hasten to remember Ian, that stayed on the right side of the cone, which would be just about a worst-case scenario for the Tampa Bay area. So, in other words, we're not saying it's going to be a worst-case scenario for the Tampa Bay area, but I'm not ruling out being a really bad situation in metropolitan Tampa Bay. So just get everybody in the right frame of mind here. That when we're saying we're focusing on Tampa, it's because the threat is high, not because it's guaranteed that this is going to be the worst it could be. And also, obviously, you could have a Category 4 or Category 5 that would be worse. I'm talking about the worst case for this particular storm, which is forecast to be very strong. All right, let's get back here and take a look here. I'm waiting for my machine to catch up with me here. So what I expect we're going to need to focus on is what's going to happen outside the cone. So when we look close up here, again, we can see the wind speeds. The forecast from the Hurricane Center is 115 miles per hour in this time period here. And this AM refers to nominally 8 a.m. in the morning on Wednesday. So if it were to come on the right side of the cone, it would get there sooner, maybe sunrise-ish. And if it were to stay to the left side of the cone, it would get there later. So plus or minus. The idea is that obviously Cedar Key is right in the middle of the cone, but remembering that the winds come around like this, so the idea is that the water is going to be pushed against the coast to the right of the cone. So that's where the big threat is. So anything happening north of Tampa Bay really concerns us for the Tampa metropolitan area. All right, let's look at that wind possibility. So here's the model, where the model puts it. The Hurricane Center puts it a little bit. What I realize is that you guys that have not been hearing me for some reason. Thank you, TJ, for letting me know that. Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do is this is our first one of these of the year, obviously, so let me see if I can get control here of things and go back, because let's just start here with the cone, because this is the most critical thing. All right, guys, I can see you can hear me now. What I said earlier is put a Q in front of your question, if you would, so I can tell that you're asking a question. And let's go through it from the point of this cone. And I'll tell you what we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to do this real quickly with you, and then I'm going to have to come back and talk to you in a little bit. So one thing at a time. Okay, so what I was saying about the cone is the center of the cone people tend to focus on. But if you remember Ian, I want everybody to remember Ian, that the storm went down the right side of the cone. So it happens. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it happens. If we get a storm down the right side of the cone, with the wind coming in like this, pushing water into Tampa Bay, for this storm, that's just about a worst case scenario. So when we make forecasts here, we want everybody to understand that we don't want anybody stuck in and have storm surge coming over them like happened in Hurricane Ian. So we want everybody to take heed of what the reasonable worst possibility is for their location. So that's the issue that we're interested in here. The idea is that when the storm makes landfall on Wednesday morning, this AM here is nominally 8 a.m. In the morning, that it's a 115 mile an hour hurricane. That's a Category 3. We should be ready for a strong Category 3 to maybe a Category 4. So we should be ready for something really extreme along the coast there. Now, in terms of the winds, this is what the National Hurricane Center is predicting in terms of the size of the winds that are 40 miles per hour or higher in the yellow. So you see that goes all the way down and includes Cape Coral, the Fort Myers area. Unfortunately, that's going to be driving some water into Fort Myers, but not extreme. We're talking about maybe something that could knock out power, but not an extreme situation there. The oranges here are where we get the hurricane force gusts. And you can see, even if this goes up in the middle of the cone, that's going to put hurricane force gusts into the Tampa Bay area. These are the hurricane force sustained winds here. You see it's a relatively small area. But if it were to shift over to the edge of the cone, just imagine taking all of that and shifting it to the right, you can see stronger winds throughout the Tampa Bay metropolitan area. And this is we're just looking at tomorrow morning here, obviously, it would propagate forward over the land. So here are the warnings. A storm surge warning. What a storm surge warning means is the Gulf water or the bay water more than 3 feet above the normal high tide. 3 feet or more above the normal high tide. That's what a warning means. And a watch means there's a possibility. So this means, based on scientific certainty, the best we can do, be ready for that kind of tide. Now we're going to talk about more specifics here. And here, let's take a look at them. First of all, up to the north, because the thinking is that the center is going to go to the north of Tampa Bay. So what that means is that the highest tides, up to 11 feet in the Nature Coast here, south of the Perry area, on down to north of the Tampa Bay metropolitan area. But look at this, up to 9 feet here, up to 7 feet in the Tampa Bay area. So these are extreme water levels above normal high tide that you see. I'm just going to show you some of the Tampa metropolitan area. All these areas around here all have the potential of flooding. So everybody that lives anywhere around Tampa Bay or on the Gulf side near Tampa Bay, you need to just be aware of exactly where you stand in terms of evacuation orders from Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, and the surrounding counties. Everybody get in touch. If you're in Tampa, tune into Fox 13 and they'll give you the latest information, or seek it out from your local county. This is very, very critical. So here you see farther south, still some storm surge up to 4 feet, even down there where we had all the issues with Ian. So just beware of your local forecasts, even a little storm surge as far south as the Keys. Just to remind you what storm surge is, and I'm going to have to, I've got a few more minutes here. So just to remind you what storm surge is, here you are on an average day. There's your average high tide. Everybody, I think, can relate to that. Okay, then what happens is the wind comes in, pushes the water from the Gulf, pushes the water into the bay, pushes the water on up over the land, because obviously when the water gets higher, it has to flood. So it's the water rise due to the wind over the normal high tide. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about storm surge. This is not a survivable situation if that water is obviously so high that you can't maneuver in it. Your car will be wrecked in 1 foot of water, okay? Salt water will wreck your car. So this is an extremely, this is a situation you want to avoid with your car, your home, yourself, your family, your friends. You want to avoid that situation. In terms of the wind, this is where the hurricane warning is. From south, this goes down to Englewood, so south of Sarasota, on up to south of Tallahassee. All those purple areas, including inland, are expecting hurricane force winds. Now, exactly where the core of it is, the question is, it's probably up in here, Cedar Key to, north of Tampa, but there's a lot of still room for things to change. Notice the wind alerts extend to hurricane watches, include Gainesville, for example. Tropical storm warnings in effect for Orlando. Tropical storm watches on the west coast of the state, or east coast of the state, because it'll take longer to get there. And then the cone goes on out to the east. All right, guys, I want to answer your questions, but I need to tune out right now, and I will be back, and you'll see the slate pop up, and I promise you won't have to wait so long. As soon as I have a meeting I have to go to. And thanks to everybody that sent in hellos, and remember, if you have a question, put a Q colon in front of it, and then I'll be able to find it, and I'll see you back here in just a little bit. All right, take care.